Jungkook has had a rough few days in military camp. Piling tasks, intense physical training, and mental stress made his body finally give in. A high fever accompanied by severe fatigue has kept him in the camp's medical room for the past few days. Yesterday, his family was allowed to visit him. The meeting brought Jungkook some relief. His mother's smile, his father's support, and his brother's warm embrace gave him renewed strength to fight the pain that was racking his body. However, after his family returned home, the feeling of loneliness began to creep back in. On a cold morning, Jimin, Jungkook's best friend and career partner, entered the medical room with quiet steps. He carried a paper bag filled with warm bread and herbal drinks that he had made himself in the camp kitchen. Jimin was wearing a thick military jacket, but his face showed an irreplaceable warmth. "Jungkook, you're still alive, right?" Jimin joked upon entering. Jungkook, who was lying down reading a thin book, turned his head and smiled weakly. "Hyung, you think I'm so weak?" Jimin sat on the chair next to Jungkook's bed and placed the paper bag on the small table. "If you're not weak, why are you lying here? You should know when to stop, Jungkook." Jungkook chuckled, though his voice sounded hoarse. "Did you come to nag or help?" "Both," Jimin replied casually. He opened the paper bag, took out the bread and herbal drink, and offered them to Jungkook. "Eat this. I won't leave until you're done." Jungkook sighed and took the bread. "You're just like my mom." "Good. That means I did a good job." While eating, Jungkook listened to Jimin's stories about the training days at camp. Jimin deliberately discussed the funny things that happened during training, such as their teammates following the coach's instructions incorrectly, or how one of their friends got stuck in the mud while running on a wet track. The stories made Jungkook laugh, albeit in a weak voice. "Hyung," Jungkook said after a while, "thank you for coming. I know you're busy, but you still made time for me." Jimin smiled. "You know, friendship isn't just about sharing good times. If I'm not there for you when you're sick, what kind of a friend am I?" That day, Jimin decided to completely put aside other duties and spend a long time in the medical room with Jungkook. After making sure Jungkook finished eating and drinking, Jimin patiently invited his best friend to slowly get up from the bed. With a firm arm supporting Jungkook, he guided his best friend's small steps along the corridor of the medical room. "Take it slow. Don't rush," Jimin said in a gentle tone, albeit with an ignorant smile. "I don't want to be responsible if you fall and get worse." Jungkook snorted with a small smile. "I'm not a kid, Hyung. I can walk by myself if you don't talk too much." However, Jungkook didn't really let go of Jimin's grip. His steps still staggered, and the stiffness in his muscles felt like moving a heavy stone. But Jimin's presence made it all feel lighter. As they continued to walk, they talked. At first, it was about simple things: the cold weather, the camp food that always tasted the same, and how bored Jungkook was being in the medical room without being able to join in the training. However, their conversation soon turned to more interesting topics. "You know," Jimin said as he guided Jungkook to turn the corner at the end of the corridor, "as soon as this term is over, I want to go to the beach, rent a small inn, eat fresh seafood, and enjoy the sun without someone yelling 50 push-ups in my ear." Jungkook laughed softly, though his face was still a little pale. "That sounds good. I might come along, but I have other plans too. I want to go to a big concert, feel the crowd, sing until my voice runs out. You know, I really miss music." Jimin smiled, nodding as he listened. "Then let's make a deal. After the assignment is done, I'll come to your concert, and you come to the beach with me. We'll make sure we eat good food. No more military camp-style menus." Jungkook nodded eagerly, as if the pain was eased just by imagining those days. "And we have to eat tons of fried chicken, Hyung. I've been dreaming about that since the first week here." "Agreed," Jimin said with a chuckle. "But I won't let you eat all that chicken by yourself. I have to get my share too." Their conversation continued to flow smoothly, bringing a light and warm atmosphere between them. In those moments, Jimin was relieved to see Jungkook smiling again, even though his steps were still heavy. At the end of the walking training session, Jungkook sat back on his bed with a slightly more refreshed face. He looked up at Jimin with eyes full of gratitude. "Hyung, I'm really grateful that you're here. Without you, I might have given up on recovering." Jimin patted Jungkook's shoulder gently, a warm smile gracing his face. "Don't be so serious, Kookie. You're strong. I'm just making sure you don't forget how great you are." That day, more than just helping Jungkook recover his physical strength, Jimin gave him something far more valuable: encouragement, happiness, and a reminder that their friendship was an irreplaceable force. Jimin's sincerity in helping Jungkook not only made Jungkook's recovery process faster, but also strengthened their bond of friendship. For Jungkook, Jimin's presence is a reminder that amidst the rigors of military life, there are small things that provide great strength: friendship, care, and togetherness. When night fell, Jungkook already looked more refreshed. Before leaving, Jimin tapped his best friend on the shoulder and said, "Get some rest. I'll be back tomorrow morning to make sure you don't run away from here." Jungkook chuckled. "I'll be waiting, Hyung." With light steps, Jimin left the medical room, though he occasionally looked back to make sure Jungkook was really resting as promised. The night air in the camp was cold, but Jimin's heart was warm, filled with relief that his best friend was showing signs of recovery. His steps crossed the deserted corridor, illuminated only by the dim lights hanging from the ceiling. However, in the middle of his steps, Jimin paused for a moment. He took his cell phone out of his uniform pocket and typed a short message to Jungkook. "Sleep well, Kookie. I know you're stubborn, but rest is part of the job too. Don't make me come over at night just to force you to sleep." After sending that message, Jimin smiled a little. He knew Jungkook would probably reply with a sarcastic joke, but it didn't matter. For him, making sure Jungkook knew that he wasn't alone was the most important thing. Meanwhile, in the medical room, Jungkook received the message and chuckled. Although his body still felt weak, he felt an inexplicable warmth. Their friendship had been tested by many situations, but it was moments like this that strengthened the bond. "You Hyung?" Jungkook muttered as he placed his phone on the small table next to the bed. But in his heart, he felt lucky to have someone like Jimin. Jimin, on the other hand, walked over to the camp's small cafeteria to grab a cup of coffee. He had decided to stay awake that night, just in case Jungkook needed anything. As he waited for the coffee to finish brewing, his mind drifted to their various memories during the military camp. He remembered how Jungkook, who was usually energetic and tireless, was always the first to finish every physical challenge. However, behind his strength, Jimin knew there was a vulnerable side to Jungkook's side that was reluctant to ask for help and always wanted to look strong. They both chuckled. At breakfast together, the conversation flowed lightly again. Jimin devised a small plan to help Jungkook recover faster, from guiding him through light exercises to accompanying him to read a book or simply chatting to keep him from getting bored.